Hypixel Skyblock has received a lot of updates over the years, but I think a lot of attention hasn't actually been put on the updates that have been cancelled or otherwise have not come out. Today we're going to change that and go over Hypixel Skyblock's cancelled updates. Before we begin, I just want to say please make sure to like and subscribe down below, as it really helps out the channel a lot as we push towards 75k, and use code RAIL on the Hypixel store for 5% off your order, as it's the best way to support the channel. Starting off today, we're going to talk about a very old cancelled update. This is the original Rev Tier 6 and potentially even Tier 7 update. This was around in 2020-ish from my understanding, like before Dungeons even dropped. This was developed partially by Minikloon. It had Tier 6 revs in a very, very early state. It may have even had some Tier 7 revs, and there were ideas thrown around for other Slayer updates. The boss at the time had 4k DPS, which is really interesting to think about, because at the time that was a very scary boss, but obviously it wouldn't do anything to players nowadays. It was likely cancelled due to balancing issues at the time, and also a lot of the development of the game was focused on getting dungeons out, so working on it wasn't likely the admin's biggest priority. It was in a relatively complete state though, which is kind of interesting. I imagine the balancing issues just got too bad, and they were like, hey, we're just not going to do this right now as we're releasing a major combat update anyway. Maybe we push this down the road a little bit. I wonder how much of something like this would end up in a future Slayer update. I know obviously the admins are working on that fairly soon, so hopefully we see something like a Rev Tier 6, or maybe just other Tier 5s in the first place. I think many of the other Slayers need it, but let me know what you think about this one down below. Ability Transfusion is a very interesting one, and definitely one of the most controversial ones on the list. Basically how it worked is that there was an NPC in the hub with a questline that allowed you to unlock Ability Transfusion. You would then go to this NPC, put an item in his menu, and you would unlock that ability to be transfused onto other items. You were then able to change up items' abilities, do pretty much whatever you wanted with them. And yes, this applied to the Wither Scrolls as well. So you could have like a rogue sword with Wither impact, which is very interesting to think about conceptually. The idea behind this update was that it would allow admins to basically make different weapons more easily. It would make the development process of the game apparently better in some way, shape, or form. It was also to make players feel less restricted in their gear, which was a major issue at the time, but obviously it was not super popular, and it was in fact scrapped due to complaints, which I totally understand. At the time of the update, I was actually one of the few people who was in favor of it, at least to a degree. I thought it had some interesting ideas to present, but I do think, looking back, a lot of the charm in Skyblock are the items that we've had over years and years. If we give up all of that progress for the sake of an Ability Transfusion update, I don't know how good it would end up being. Next up, we have an update that I think a lot of people still wish would drop, and that is the Primal Dragons update. The TLDR for this one is basically where you would be able to make awakened summoning eyes using regular summoning eyes and null ovoids, and when using those summoning eyes, you would get special versions of the dragon fight. God Mode, Dragon Rush, multiple dragons would appear. Sometimes you'd get primals, which were a new, extremely strong type of dragon, and on top of that, there was a bunch of extra loot. A Mythic Ender Dragon, which frankly was kind of mid from the Primal Dragon Egg, the Blade of Dragonfire, which was an upgrade to the aspect of the dragons, and also the titular Primal Dragon Armor. Now this armor was completely and totally busted. At release, it was super powerful, had extremely high damage, extremely high defensive stats, and also had an absurd amount of magic find. It would also get stronger the stronger you were and the more dragons that you had completed. This was completely broken. You could also take it into dungeons and dungeonize it, making it the best setup for the dungeons as a whole, which was absolutely absurd. The update was shelved due to technical issues, but I also think it was shelved partially due to the community response. I think people didn't really love the Primal Dragon armor. They didn't like that it could be dungeonized at all. There was a lot of complaints about the idea of players being able to use armor that was better than Necron, even though you would get it outside of dungeons. I always found that argument a little bit silly. I mean, Terminator's excellent, and you don't get that in dungeons, but I do kind of understand the argument. You don't want to put a completely broken set in the game, and I think that's part of the reason. Although the stated reason for the admins was that it was just a pain in the ass on the servers. Obviously, if you're summoning waves and waves of dragons, it can be extremely tough to, keep the servers running properly. But it was a really popular update, and I wonder if it will return in the future. Alright, for this next one, the Copium is out in full force. It's called SkyBlock Chapters, and frankly, we didn't know much about it at its release on the Alpha Network. The TLDR, though, was that it was going to be a system in which you were able to complete quests and progress through SkyBlock, and it would basically show new players the way around the game. Now, this was scrapped because the admins said that they had a better way to do this in the future. I don't know what they meant by that because it's about a year and a half later and nothing has come of the SkyBlock Chapters system. And frankly, I thought Chapters was super cool. You were able to get SkyBlock XP through it, it would show players the basics of the game, teach them about certain mechanics, and allow them to progress at their own pace, which I thought was really, really nice. Definitely a system that could have brought a lot of people to the game. I hope eventually we do get an early game revamp. It's something that's so necessary for the long-term health of the game. I feel like some of the early game features are not shown off in the best way. Stuff like magical power is missed by the early game players because they just think it's not that important, and then you end up with players trying to do M7 with 400 MP, and that's a problem all by itself. Would love to see something like SkyBlock Chapters brought back, or maybe put in the game in a different form. If they have a better way to do it, I would love to see it. I'm all ears. This next one's pretty interesting. It is called Attributes on Everything, and it sounds like, well, exactly what it sounds like. The concept here was that you would be able to put attributes on pretty much any item you wanted, and this kind of ended up turning into an update, at least in a weird way. Nowadays, attributes are only applicable on a few items, but eventually with the release of the Foraging update in 2029, we'll actually get attributes on everything in a roundabout way because they'll be in a menu and they won't be on items specifically. You'll also be able to collect whatever attributes you want through the hunting system. It's kind of interesting that this sort of weird niche update that wasn't received well at the time will make its way into the game in a kind of weird, unique way. It is kind of interesting to see the development process of SkyBlock and how they go through these iterative design processes. I'm really interested to see more about this update in the future in terms of the attribute update and the hunting update as a whole. Obviously, that's going to be with the foraging update, and Lord knows when that thing is going to drop. Hopefully it's soon. But once again, would love to hear what you guys think in the comments down below. Do you think this update would have been good at the time? Do you think it would have made certain builds or setups too powerful or too weak? Would love to hear what you think. Another somewhat revived update, it's actually the Abyss. This was cancelled due to 1.8.9 being generally lackluster for a fishing-related update of that caliber. They wanted to do a full fishing island where you were able to go around on boats and dive to the lowest depths and God knows what. But this ended up not happening, but it did kind of happen in a few ways. First of all, it's somewhat revived in the form of the Foraging Update's pressure system, as well as many of the islands on Galatea having a lot of fishing content related to them. They've shown off a bunch of the creatures already, which is pretty cool. Would love to see something like the Abyss come in its full form whenever the server is able to migrate to 1.20 or something like that. Fishing is pretty interesting in SkyBlock. I think it's actually set up fairly well, so it'd be nice to see some additional content for it in the form of the Abyss. Overall, that about wraps up the SkyBlock cancelled updates. There are a few smaller ones I could have gone over, like the Mythic Armadillo update or the thing that was supposed to be on the Jerry Island, but that never ended up happening, and I feel like those updates are not significant enough to go over in depth. If I ever do a part 2 of this, I'll be sure to include some of those additions, as well as some future ones, which I imagine there inevitably will be some cancelled updates in the future as well. Make sure you like and subscribe down below if you enjoyed the video, and use code RAIL on the Hypixel store for 5% off your order. And look to the future, fellas. I'll see you then.